Witold Pilecki put on his coat, checked his watch, kissed his wife Maria goodbye. "I'll be back in a few days," he told her. It was a lie. He wouldn't see her again for 5 years. And even then, he wouldn't be the same man. Most people who went to Auschwitz didn't choose to go. They were rounded up, dragged from their homes, forced onto cattle cars. Witold Pilecki walked into a German roundup deliberately, because someone had to know what was happening inside the camps. Someone had to witness, document, survive, and tell the world. The problem was simple. No one who entered Auschwitz ever came back. So Witold decided to be the first. Not to escape immediately, but to stay, for as long as it took, to see everything, to report everything, and then, if he survived, to escape and deliver the truth. It was the most insane plan anyone had ever conceived. It was also the bravest. At 7:15 a.m., Witold walked toward the German checkpoint on Wojska Polskiego Street. A Lapanka was in progress, a roundup. Nazi soldiers blocking the road, dogs barking, men being thrown into trucks. His friend Tomasz Serafiński grabbed his arm. "What are you doing?" "What needs to be done?" "They'll arrest you." "I know." "Witold, this is suicide." He looked at him. No, suicide is doing nothing. He pulled free, walked forward. The Germans saw him, shouted, grabbed him, threw him against the wall. Checked his papers. Witold Pilecki, age 39, former Polish cavalry officer. Perfect. They shoved him into the truck. 42 men crammed together, silent, terrified. The truck drove east, toward a place most of them had only heard whispers about. Konzentrationslager Auschwitz. And Witold Pilecki had just bought a one-way ticket to hell. This is the story of the man who volunteered for Auschwitz, who survived 945 days inside, who documented the unthinkable, who escaped to warn the world, and who was executed by the people he tried to save. To understand why Witold Pilecki made this impossible choice, you need to know who he was before the war. He was born on May 13, 1901, in Olonets, Russia. His family was Polish nobility, but they'd been exiled to Russia for opposing the Tsar. When Witold was 17, Poland regained independence after 123 years of partition. His family returned home. Witold joined the Polish army, fought in the Polish-Soviet War of 1920, became a cavalry officer. After the war, he settled down, married Maria, had 2 children, Andrei and Zofia. He ran a small estate, raised horses, taught at a local school. He was, by all accounts, an ordinary man. Then, on September 1, 1939, Germany invaded Poland. On September 17th, the Soviet Union invaded from the east. Poland was crushed in 5 weeks, partitioned again, occupied, erased from the map. But Witold didn't surrender. He helped form the Secret Polish Army, an underground resistance organization. They gathered intelligence, sabotaged German operations, prepared for the day Poland would be free again. By mid-1940, rumors were spreading about the German camps, places where Poles were being sent, political prisoners, resistance members, anyone the Nazis deemed dangerous.
One name kept appearing in whispered conversations: Auschwitz, a former Polish army barracks near the town of Auschwitz. The Germans had converted it into a concentration camp in May 1940. People who went there didn't come back. No letters, no news, just silence. The Polish underground needed to know what was happening inside. They needed intelligence. They needed a witness. Witold Pilecki volunteered. His commanders thought he was insane. They tried to talk him out of it. "You won't survive." "Maybe," Witold said, "but if I do, we'll know the truth. And if you don't, then send someone else." On September 19, 1940, Witold Pilecki walked into that roundup using a false identity, Tomasz Serafiński. He was arrested, processed, loaded onto a truck with 42 other men. None of them knew where they were going, but they knew it wasn't good. The truck drove for hours, through the Polish countryside, past villages, past farms, past churches, past the world they would never see again. Finally, late in the afternoon, the truck stopped. The men were ordered out, lined up, counted. Witold looked around. Brick buildings, watchtowers, barbed wire fences, guards with dogs and rifles. Above the gate, a metal sign: Arbeit macht frei. Work sets you free. Another lie. The men were marched through the gate, into a courtyard. An SS officer stood on a platform. He spoke in German, loud, clear. "You are now prisoners of the Reich. You have no names. You have no rights. You exist only to work. If you obey, you live. If you disobey, you die. This is not a prison. This is not a camp. This is the place where Poland comes to end." The men were stripped, their heads shaved, their clothes taken. They were given striped uniforms, wooden clogs, a number. Witold Pilecki became prisoner 4859. That number would be tattooed on his arm the next day. And from that moment on, Witold ceased to exist. There was only 4859. A number, a unit of labor, expendable. The first night, the prisoners were locked in Block 17, a brick barracks with wooden bunks stacked 3 high. No mattresses, no blankets, just bare wood. Witold lay on his bunk, staring at the ceiling. Around him, men wept, prayed, whispered to each other in the dark. Witold didn't weep, didn't pray. He was thinking. He had infiltrated Auschwitz. Now he had to survive it. And more importantly, he had to document it. Everything he saw, everything he heard, every death, every torture, every crime. Because if he ever made it out, the world needed to know. The question was, how long could a man survive in hell?
The first weeks at Auschwitz were designed to break prisoners, physically, mentally, spiritually. The day began at 4 a.m., a siren, Guards shouting, dogs barking. Roll call. Appel. Prisoners stood in rows in the courtyard for hours, in rain, in cold, in heat. If someone moved, they were beaten. If someone collapsed, they were shot. Roll call could last 2 hours, sometimes 6. Once, Witold stood for 11 hours because the count didn't match. After roll call, work. The prisoners were assigned to commandos, work details. Some hauled stones, some dug ditches, some built new barracks, some sorted the belongings of dead prisoners. The work was brutal, pointless, designed to exhaust. Guards beat prisoners for working too slowly, for working too quickly, for looking at them, for not looking at them. There was no logic, only violence. Witold was assigned to a construction commando, carrying bricks, mixing cement. 12 hours a day with 1 break, 15 minutes, watery soup, and a piece of bread. If a prisoner couldn't work, he was useless, and useless prisoners were eliminated. In the first month, Witold watched 400 men die, shot, beaten to death, worked to death, starved to death. Bodies were stacked like firewood, burned in a makeshift crematorium. The smell never left. But Witold didn't break, because he understood something the Nazis didn't. He wasn't just a prisoner, he was a soldier on a mission, and his mission required he survive. By November 1940, Witold had identified other prisoners who might be trusted, men who hadn't given up, men who still had fight left. He began recruiting carefully, quietly. A whispered conversation during roll call, a shared piece of bread, a knowing glance. By December, he had formed a small group, 6 men. They called themselves Związek Organizacji Wojskowej, the Union of Military Organization, ZOW. Their goals were simple. 1. Maintain morale, remind prisoners they were still human. 2. Sabotage German operations, slow down work, damage equipment, small acts of resistance. 3. Gather intelligence, document everything. 4. Prepare for the day when the Polish army or the Allies would come to liberate them. And 5. Get information out of the camp, somehow. The network grew slowly. By mid-1941, ZOW had nearly 100 members spread across different barracks and work commandos. They operated in total secrecy. If the SS discovered them, everyone would be executed. Witold established a system of dead drops, messages hidden in latrines, in the walls, in the crematorium. And he also began working with prisoners who had contact with the outside world. Certain commandos worked outside the camp perimeter. They could pass messages to Polish civilians. The messages were coded, hidden in bread, in clothing, in tools. And slowly, impossibly, information began to flow out of Auschwitz. Reports on the number of prisoners, the death rate, the conditions, the murders. The reports reached the Polish underground in Warsaw. From there, they were forwarded to the Polish government in exile in London, and from London to the British and Americans. But the reports were incomplete, fragmentary, hard to believe. Because in late 1940, early 1941, Auschwitz was still primarily a camp for Polish political prisoners. The full horror, the industrialized mass murder, hadn't begun yet. That would come later, and Witold would witness it.
In March 1941, Heinrich Himmler visited Auschwitz. He inspected the camp, spoke with the commandant, Rudolf Höss, and gave an order: expand. Auschwitz was going to grow. dramatically. Construction began on Auschwitz II, Birkenau, a massive new camp 3 kilometers away, designed to hold 100,000 prisoners. Witold didn't know it yet, but Birkenau would become the center of the Nazi extermination program. By summer 1941, Soviet prisoners of war began arriving, thousands of them, crammed into Auschwitz I. The Nazis had invaded the Soviet Union in June 1941, and POWs were flooding into the camp system. The Soviets were treated worse than anyone, starved, beaten, worked to death. Witold watched 10,000 Soviet prisoners die in 3 months. Then, in September 1941, something changed. The SS conducted an experiment. They took 600 Soviet POWs and 250 sick Polish prisoners, locked them in the basement of Block 11, and gassed them with Zyklon B, a pesticide, normally used to kill lice. But in an enclosed space with enough concentration, it killed people. The experiment was a success from the Nazi perspective. The prisoners died within 20 minutes. The bodies were removed, the basement aired out, ready for the next batch. Witold learned about this from a prisoner who worked in Block 11. He couldn't believe it at first. Gassing people like insects. But it was true. And it was just the beginning. By early 1942, the Nazis had built 4 large gas chambers at Birkenau, disguised as shower rooms. Jews from across Europe began arriving, not as prisoners, as victims. They were told they were being resettled, told to undress for delousing, herded into the chambers. The doors were sealed. The Zyklon B dropped through vents in the ceiling. Within 15 minutes, everyone inside was dead. The bodies were dragged out by Sonderkommandos, Jewish prisoners forced to work in the gas chambers, and burned in massive crematoriums, thousands per day. Witold documented everything, the numbers, the methods, the scale. He sent reports through his network, message after message. They are killing Jews by the thousands. They have built factories of death. This is not war. This is extermination. The reports reached London by mid-1942. The Allies received them, read them, and largely dismissed them. Too extreme, too horrific, too unbelievable. Surely the reports were exaggerated. Propaganda. Mistakes. No civilized nation could systematically murder millions of people. Could they?
By 1943, Witold Pilecki had been in Auschwitz for 945 days, 2.5 years. He had survived typhus, starvation, beatings, selections. He had watched tens of thousands of men, women, and children die. He had documented it all, sent hundreds of reports, and the world had done nothing. No rescue mission, no Allied bombing of the rail lines, no intervention. Auschwitz continued to operate, expand, consume. Witold realized something devastating. No one was coming. The Polish underground couldn't liberate the camp. They didn't have the resources. The Allies didn't believe the reports, or didn't care. If Auschwitz was going to be exposed, Witold would have to escape and deliver his testimony in person. He began planning. Escaping Auschwitz was nearly impossible. The camp was surrounded by electrified fences, watchtowers, patrols, dogs. Prisoners who tried to escape were hunted down and executed, often publicly, as a warning. But Witold had advantages. He had been in the camp for nearly 3 years. He knew the layout, the routines, the weaknesses. He had allies in Zor, men who would help. And most importantly, he had been assigned to a commando that worked in a bakery outside the main camp perimeter. The bakery supplied bread to the SS. It was run by a civilian Pole who was secretly sympathetic to the resistance. This was Witold's chance. He recruited two other prisoners, Jan Rajay and Edward Ciezelski, both members of Zor, both willing to risk everything. The plan was simple. On the night of April 26, 1943, the three of them would hide in the bakery after the work detail returned to camp. They would steal SS uniforms from a storage room, wait until after midnight, then walk out the gate, dressed as guards, carrying forged papers. If anyone stopped them, they would claim they were on a late-night patrol. If anyone questioned the papers, they would run. It was insane, desperate, a 1 in a million chance, but it was a chance.
April 26, 1943, 8:47 p.m. The work commando finished for the day. The prisoners lined up to march back to the main camp. Witold, Jan, and Edward slipped away, hid in a storage closet. They waited. Hours passed. Outside, the camp settled into its nighttime routine, guards patrolling, dogs barking, searchlights sweeping the perimeter. At 11:30 p.m., the three men emerged from the closet, found the storage room, grabbed 3 SS uniforms, put them on. Witold looked at himself in a cracked mirror. For 2.5 years, he had been prisoner 4859, a number, a nothing. Now he was dressed as one of them. The disguise felt wrong, obscene, but it might keep him alive for the next hour. At midnight, they walked out of the bakery, into the yard, 50 meters to the gate. Witold's heart pounded, his hands shook. They walked slowly, calmly, like they belonged there. A guard at the gate looked up. "Halt, papers." Witold handed over the forged documents. The guard studied them, frowned. "These aren't stamped." "Administrative error. We're filing a report tomorrow." The guard looked at them, suspicious. Witold didn't breathe. Then the guard shrugged, handed the papers back. "Fine, go." The gate opened. Witold, Jan, and Edward walked through, out of Auschwitz, into the night. They didn't run, not yet. They walked for 5 minutes, away from the camp, toward the forest. Then, when they were out of sight of the watchtowers, they ran. Through the trees, through the darkness. They ran until their legs gave out, until they collapsed in a ditch. And for the first time in 945 days, Witold Pilecki was free.
The journey back to Warsaw took 6 days. Witold, Jan, and Edward traveled at night, hid during the day, avoided roads, avoided people. They stole civilian clothes from a farmhouse, forged new papers, pretended to be migrant workers. On May 2, 1943, they reached Warsaw. Witold went immediately to the Polish underground headquarters. He was emaciated, filthy, barely recognizable. But he was alive, and he had a story to tell. Over the next 3 months, Witold wrote his report. It was 100 pages long, typed, detailed, precise. It documented everything: the structure of Auschwitz, the number of prisoners, the death rate, the gas chambers, the crematoriums, the selections, the medical experiments. It described the systematic extermination of Jews, the arrival of transports,
the deception, the murder, the disposal of bodies. It named names, SS officers, capos, informants. It was the most comprehensive first-hand account of Auschwitz ever written. The report was titled Rapport Witolda, Witold's Report. It was delivered to the Polish government in exile in London in August 1943. From there, it was passed to the British and American governments. They read it, and they did nothing. Why? Why did the Allies ignore Witold Pilecki's report? There were several reasons. 1. They didn't fully believe it. The scale of the atrocities described seemed impossible. Industrial murder of millions? Gas chambers disguised as showers? Surely this was exaggeration. 2. They had other priorities. The war was being fought on multiple fronts. Resources were limited. Military strategists argued that the best way to help the Jews was to win the war as quickly as possible. 3. Anti-Semitism. Even among the Allies, there was a reluctance to prioritize Jewish suffering. Some officials privately believed the reports were Jewish propaganda designed to manipulate Allied policy. 4. Practicality. What could they do? Auschwitz was deep in Nazi-occupied territory. Bombing the camp risked killing prisoners. Bombing the rail lines might slow deportations temporarily, but the Nazis would rebuild them. So they did nothing, and the trains kept arriving at Auschwitz, and the gas chambers kept running, and hundreds of thousands more people died. Witold had risked everything to deliver the truth, and the truth had been filed away.
After delivering his report, Witold didn't rest. He joined the Polish Home Army, fought in the Warsaw Uprising of August to October 1944, a desperate, doomed rebellion against the Nazi occupation. 65,000 resistance fighters against German tanks and artillery. The Poles held out for 63 days. Then they were crushed. 200,000 civilians died. Warsaw was leveled, burned, destroyed. Witold survived, barely. He was captured by the Germans in October 1944, sent to a POW camp in Germany. He remained there until May 1945, when American forces liberated the camp. The war in Europe was over. Witold returned to Poland, but Poland wasn't free. The Nazis were gone, but the Soviets had moved in. Stalin had installed a communist government in Warsaw, a puppet regime controlled by Moscow. And the communists didn't like the Polish Home Army. The Home Army had been loyal to the Polish government in exile in London. They represented the old Poland, the free Poland. Stalin saw them as enemies. By 1946, thousands of Home Army members had been arrested, executed, disappeared. Witold's friends warned him, "Leave Poland, go to London, you're not safe here." But Witold refused. "This is my country. I won't abandon it." He began working for the Home Army underground again, gathering intelligence on the communist regime, preparing for resistance. It was a mistake. On May 8, 1947, Witold Pilecki was arrested by the Polish secret police. The charge? Espionage for Western powers. It was absurd, but in Stalin's Poland, truth didn't matter. Witold was imprisoned in Mokotów prison in Warsaw, the same prison the Nazis had used during the occupation. He was interrogated, tortured, beaten. They wanted him to confess, to name his co-conspirators, to betray the Home Army network. Witold refused. He had survived Auschwitz. He had survived the Warsaw Uprising. He had survived the Nazis. But he couldn't survive the communists.
The trial began on March 3, 1948. It was a show trial, predetermined, scripted. The prosecutor called Witold a traitor, a fascist, an enemy of the people. Witnesses testified against him. Some were genuine informants, others were coerced, threatened. Witold was allowed to speak briefly in his own defense. He stood, looked at the judges, and said, "I have done nothing wrong. I served Poland. I fought the Nazis. I tried to expose Auschwitz. I tried to save lives. If that is a crime, then I am guilty." The judges deliberated for 15 minutes. Verdict: guilty. Sentence: death. On May 25, 1948, at 9:30 p.m., Witold Pilecki was led into the basement of Mokotów prison. A small room, concrete walls, a drain in the floor. An executioner waited, anonymous, hooded. Witold was told to kneel. He refused. "I die standing," he said. They forced him down, one shot, to the back of the head. Witold died instantly. His body was thrown into a mass grave, location unknown. The communists erased his name from history. His reports were classified. His family was harassed. His story was buried. For 42 years, Witold Pilecki, the man who volunteered for Auschwitz, who survived 945 days, who escaped to warn the world, was forgotten.
In 1989, the Soviet Union collapsed. The communist regime in Poland fell. Poland was free again. And slowly, historians began uncovering the truth. In 1990, Witold Pilecki was officially exonerated. His sentence was annulled, his name cleared. His report, Raport Witolda, was declassified and published. The world finally learned what he had done. But it was too late. He had been dead for 42 years. In 2006, Poland posthumously awarded him the Order of the White Eagle, the nation's highest honor. In 2013, a memorial was erected in Warsaw, a statue of Witold, overlooking the city he had fought to save. But most people still don't know his name. Ask someone to name a hero of World War II. They'll say Eisenhower, Churchill, Patton, Schindler. They won't say Witold Pilecki. And yet, what he did was extraordinary. He volunteered for Auschwitz, not because he was captured, not because he had no choice, but because it was necessary. He survived 945 days in hell, documented the industrialized murder of millions, organized resistance inside the camp. He escaped, wrote the most comprehensive first-hand account of the Holocaust, delivered it to the Allies, and they ignored him. He survived the Nazis, but he couldn't survive the system that came after. He was executed for being loyal to the wrong version of Poland. And for 40 years, the world forgot him. There's a question people ask about Witold Pilecki. Why did he do it? Why volunteer for Auschwitz? Why risk everything? A historian once asked his son, Andrzej, that question. Andrzej said, "My father believed that some truths are more important than one man's life. Someone had to witness what was happening. Someone had to tell the world. He believed that if people knew, if they truly understood,
they would act. But they didn't. The Allies knew. They had Witold's report. They had other reports. They had evidence. And they chose not to act. Not because they were evil, but because stopping the Holocaust wasn't a priority. Winning the war was the priority. And millions died while the Allies waited for victory. Witold Pilecki understood this. Even before he escaped, he understood. In one of his reports smuggled out of Auschwitz, he wrote, "The world is speaking in a language we cannot understand. We scream, but they do not hear." That was the tragedy of Witold Pilecki. He witnessed the unthinkable. He documented it. He risked everything to deliver the truth. And the truth was filed away. Until it was too late.
Today, if you visit Auschwitz, you can see Block 11, the death block, where prisoners were tortured and executed. In the basement, there's a small memorial, a plaque. It lists the names of some of the prisoners who died there. Witold Pilecki's name is not on that plaque, because he didn't die there. He escaped. But in a way, part of him did die there. The man who walked out of Auschwitz in April 1943 wasn't the same man who walked in September 1940. He had seen too much, endured too much, lost too much. His wife Maria said that when he came home after the war, he was different, quieter, haunted. He never spoke about Auschwitz with his family, never described what he'd seen. He wrote it in his report. That was enough. After that, he tried to forget. But you can't forget Auschwitz. It stays with you, in your dreams, in your waking hours, in every moment of silence. Witold Pilecki carried Auschwitz with him for the rest of his life. And in the end, it wasn't the Nazis who killed him. It was the people he thought were the good guys. There's a photograph of Witold Pilecki taken before the war, in his cavalry uniform, young, confident, smiling. And there's another photograph, taken in 1947, after his arrest by the communists. In the second photograph, he looks like a different person, older, thinner, hollow. His eyes are empty. That's what war does. That's what witnessing genocide does. That's what betrayal does. It empties you. Witold Pilecki was emptied by Auschwitz, and then he was erased by the communists. And for 40 years, no one remembered. But we remember now. We remember the man who walked into hell voluntarily, who survived, who documented, who escaped, who fought, who was betrayed, who was murdered. We remember prisoner 4859. We remember Witold Pilecki, because some stories are too important to forget. In 2012, a mass grave was discovered beneath a street in Warsaw. Forensic investigators believed it might contain the remains of prisoners executed by the communists in the late 1940s. They hoped to find Witold Pilecki's body. After years of searching, they identified fragments that might be his, but they couldn't be certain. So Witold Pilecki, the man who volunteered for Auschwitz, who survived the unsurvivable, who documented, who escaped, who fought, who was betrayed, who was murdered, remains lost. His body, his grave, his final resting place, all unknown. It's a fitting end, in a way, because Witold Pilecki spent his entire life fighting for a Poland that never existed. The Poland he believed in, free, sovereign, just,
was always just out of reach. The Nazis destroyed it, the Soviets occupied it, the Communists corrupted it. And Witold spent his life chasing a dream of a country that valued truth, that honored sacrifice, that remembered its heroes. He died before that Poland was reborn, but maybe, just maybe, he helped create it. Because today, Poland is free. And Poles remember Witold Pilecki. They teach his story in schools. They honor him in memorials. They speak his name with reverence. He's no longer forgotten. And that, perhaps, is the victory he never lived to see.
September 19th, 1940. Witold Pilecki walked into a German roundup. May 25th, 1948, he was executed in a communist prison. 7 years, 8 months, and 6 days. That's how long Witold Pilecki fought. Against the Nazis, against Auschwitz, against silence, against forgetting, against tyranny. He fought until the end, and even in death, he kept fighting, because his story survived. His report survived. His truth survived. And now, finally, the world knows. Witold Pilecki volunteered for Auschwitz. He survived 945 days. He escaped. He documented the Holocaust. He fought for Poland. He was betrayed. He was executed. He was forgotten. And then, decades later, he was remembered. This is his story. The story of the bravest man you've never heard of. This story is based on verified historical records, including Witold Pilecki's own report, Rapport Witold, testimonies from fellow prisoners, Polish underground archives, and declassified documents from Allied intelligence. Witold Pilecki was a real person. Prisoner 4859 was his real number. The 945 days are accurate. The escape happened. The report was delivered. The execution was real. Every word of this story is true. Remember his name, Witold Pilecki, the man who volunteered for hell to document the truth, and who paid for it with his life.